Welcome to Go Home Heat, a wrestling podcast. My goodness, that may not have been the greatest wrestling match ever, but it was awesome.
It was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal match.
And Justin watched it with us, and we'll get into the match in a little bit. We're going to give you a Backlash review. This is a wrestling podcast. It's WWE specific. I have Litnick here. I have the Go Home Heat Kid Ray here.
Hi.
This is me, KP. Justin watched it with us, but he had to go because, he got to work in the morning. Life gets in the way of fun. But he mentioned during the match, the way that it's the greatest wrestling match ever is they keep doing moves from some of the greatest wrestling matches and some of the greatest wrestlers ever over the course of the match. And whoever decided that's how we tell the story, whoever made that decision, whether it was Edge or Randy or whatever, it was a wonderful way to throw the initial step.
Let's get into it later.
Out of the window. And we will totally get into that later. Okay, starts off, kickoff show. I'm just going to we're going to go through all these matches. But, anyway, okay. Andrade versus Apollo Crews is on the kickoff show. Kevin Owens is on commentary. He and Joe kill it on commentary. Angel Garza winds up getting up onto the top, onto the apron as Kevin Owens walks out, grabs his feet, pulls him off the apron. That winds up being a distraction, but not enough of a distraction. Andrade loses in a very good match up until the shenanigans, there were going to be shenanigans in all of these things because the focal point of it had to be the last match, right? And so here we have shenanigans. They don't want Apollo and Andrade to go out there and give you too much. You know what I mean? Yeah. We had to focus on that. Anyway, the point being, it was a very good little match. Apollo gets to go over with a powerbomb.
They showed the full. After this, they showed the full video of the Miz and Morrison.
Yes.
Thing.
Later on, they showed the entire Miz and Morrison, hey, hey, ho, ho, Braun Strowman needs to go video, and it was amazing. Go to, if you get the WWE Network and you missed the pre-show, I recommend the match, sort of. I recommend watching that Miz Morrison video 100%. It was a lot to take in. John Morrison is quite the piano player, and his harmonies on vocals are amazing. And if that is his voice and auto-tunes can do that for you, then I don't respect any singers in the world right now because I don't know what's real, what's not. Okay, anyway, let's go on to the first match of the evening, which winds up being Sasha and Bayley versus the Iconics versus Bliss and Cross. They change up the rules a little bit for the WWE in which they say all three can be at the ring at one time. The way they changed it up was they had all three competitors, a member of each team in the ring at one time. And so you wound up with no time for downtime. It was a fairly quick match. You had a lot of quick roll-ups early in the match with one another. They fight outside the ring, of course, and then you wind up with, like, Bliss had this strange 3-in-a-row Lou Thez presses in the middle of the match, which I thought was great. They wind up isolating the Iconics, and Bliss and Nikki wind up getting Sasha and Bayley out of the ring, and they wind up isolating and getting into a fight with one another. Peyton Royce succumbs to Bliss a little bit. Bliss goes for the Twisted Bliss, hits it. Of course, Sasha rolls Bliss over and sits on her 1, 2, 3, and the heels sneak out heelishly. And it was really good, fast-paced way to start a show. Ray, what'd you think about it?
I kind of... It was good, don't get me wrong, but I kind of thought it was like filler. Like, I don't really feel like it was essential. It was decent.
Okay, well, I enjoyed it. And so then we move on to... you had not gotten in front of a TV yet, right, Nick?
I was in the middle of watching The Five Bloods when it started, actually. So I missed a little bit of it.
Okay.
Pay-per-view.
No worries. Okay, Jeff
Highly
versus...
recommend, by the way. Highly recommend.
Yeah, Jeff versus Sheamus Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus was next, and it was a rough start, and Jeff took a beating the whole time. It was kind of a heelish night. Jeff winds up getting... Not only did Sheamus beat up Jeff, he wound up beating up Michael Cole verbally throughout the match as well. Jeff does come back. Jeff put on a very good performance right here, but he does succumb to consecutive bro kicks, one on the outside of the ring, one on the inside of the ring, and winds up losing. Thoroughly shocked that the heel goes over, a heel that we have seen try to get Jeff arrested, belittle his abuse, belittle his chance for a comeback. I'm guessing that we're hoping off the screen, they're hoping Jeff stays sober, and on screen, they're going to try to tell that tale as he goes through the ups and downs of winning and losing and how life treats you. And I think that's going to be kind of a neat journey for us. It should be interesting to see how that goes. This match, did you like it, Ray?
Oh, yeah, I really like this match.
Good deal. Good deal. Nia Jax versus... Jeff's still really talented at wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Nia Jax versus Asuka. And this was very good as well. It was kind of shortish. They,
The
Asuka's
ending.
amazing. And Nia Jax is so much better than I thought she was. Not that I just kind of forgot because she's hurt all the time, right? And then when she is healthy, she's normally in squash matches until she gets like that little time period where she was the champ. She got to wrestle a little bit, and you got to see like the match she had with Rousey, where Rousey climbed on her like she was a jungle gym, and she was able to support Rousey and do things with her. You know, you put her in there with people that can go, and you start realizing that there are these stories that can be told with a person that has the strength that she has, and Asuka was able to give us that. And they fight to the outside of the ring, and then they do a weird armbar thing right toward the end where it looks like it slipped off.
Yeah.
And then I think they had to add lib, and I assumed that the finish was supposed to be some form of a count out anyway, but the way they got to it was a little wonky.
Almost felt like it got to it too quickly.
Asuka winds up jumping onto her to get another armbar, and then now the whole time the ref's counting because she's got her in an armbar where she's hanging out of the ring almost like a tarantula, but on an armbar.
Yeah.
And then she falls out. Nia goes over the top rope with her. They wind up in another armbar, and then she slams Asuka against the railing, and then they continue to fight. Asuka gets a kick to the head, and ref counts to 10. And so then Asuka goes up to the apron and jumps onto Nia again. And I don't think this is over. I think they're going to continue to fight because I think they're going to push off Charlotte getting back to the throne to SummerSlam. Does that make sense? Or what I hope is happening is we're pushing that off because Charlotte's not going to win the women's championship because she's going to win the men's championship over Seth Rollins at some point soon. That's what I'm hoping happens. What do you think about that call out?
I'm sure that there will be so much fallout no matter what happens if that comes to pass. I'm not going to enjoy going into those arguments.
Dude, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, and Charlotte in a triple threat.
The match would be fantastic.
And
let's not get this mess mixed up here.
And
The match would be great.
and I just want to go online and watch the internet explode. Okay, move on. I'm gonna talk about that every single week until it happens or doesn't. Okay. Anyway, now after this match is over, like I said, we're probably not going to get this again. Miz and Morrison introduced us to another video, or the same video again, and again Braun interrupts, which is incredibly disappointing to all of us, right, Ray? You were looking forward to seeing it again.
It's a sad
When I
day.
was watching the shows where I was disappointed I didn't get to finish it.
Okay, good. Now this match, John Morrison is incredible. And we just say this every week, but he carries this match. The Miz does okay and all that.
Braun does Braun.
Right, but again, Braun is similar to Nia in that you can create scenarios if you are athletic that make Braun fun to watch. And the Miz can't really nothing against the Miz. There are people the Miz can get in there and have good matches with, but he can't really do that with a guy like Braun because his thing is he's kind of a slugger, and you ain't gonna slug with Braun if you're his size. You know what I mean? It's one thing if you're Drew or something, right? So anyway, but John Morrison, I watched this match, and I don't know about y'all. Tell me if I'm wrong. I came out of it thinking I would love to see John Morrison one-on-one with Braun Strowman.
Yeah, I can see that. That'd be cool. That'd be fun. I just think John Morrison versus anybody would be fun, to be honest. But
Right. I could see him wrestle Air. He's good. He
he
won.
could wrestle Charlotte and put him in that three-way we were talking about earlier.
Right. Now this also okay. So what winds up happening is Morrison. Eventually they get Braun down, and Morrison has got the pin ready for the win, and the Miz pulls him off because the pinner between Miz and Morrison would be the champion, and they had agreed that the Miz could be the champ, but you have to be the legal man to do that, and Miz wasn't the legal man, so he pulls John off. Then he realizes his error, and he says, no, I'm sorry, and puts him back on, but that doesn't help, and that's when Braun winds up finishing them both off for the win. And hopefully Hackerman Ali is about to come break these guys up, because I want John Morrison by himself. I want John to go on a string. If you're going to give me a SmackDown with Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles, go ahead and put John Morrison in that singles competition too, and let's get some great wrestling going on Friday nights. What did you think about it all, Ray?
I thought it was pretty good.
Good deal. Nick, did you have a thought?
Yeah, it's fun matches. Like you said, John Morrison stole the show. Can't wait to see more what they do with good old Morrison, which is not to like snub the Miz or anything, because he's always pretty good. But you know,
Morrison's on a different level.
Morrison was really the takeaway, honestly.
He is every week. Every week that you get to see him, he's the takeaway. You can tell he's inspired right now. He and Shinsuke both on Friday nights, you can tell, have decided they're okay with their spot in the company, and they're just going to go out there and really give you good performances, and that's fun for all of us. Okay, Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley is next, and there's a little segment backstage which is foreshadowing of what is to come, where Lana is wanting to speak to MVP, and he's like, you need to talk to your old man, not to me. This is supposed to be the biggest night of our career, Lana is implying. We get a match as Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley start. Before the bell rings, Bobby puts him in the full Nelson, and I loved it. It had that big fight feel. Once he grabbed him and was holding him, and Drew was at a huge disadvantage when the bell rang, and then Bobby just does a clinic of what this man is capable of doing offensively in big matches. He roughed up Drew. He threw Drew around. He actually threw Drew on his head on accident one time, which was rough. Did you see that spot?
Yeah, it was not pretty.
But Drew seems to be okay. Bobby used brutal moves. He used submission moves. He used it felt like when Bobby first came up, he was called the Dominator. And it was these kind of performances you would get from him every week, even if the competition was pretty good. And then when he moved on to other companies, he still was able to do this once you rang the bell, right? And to see him do this with Drew, it just reminded me of how great this guy is at pro wrestling, and Ray made the point, because at the end,
yes,
he gets the 3 count or close to a 3 count on Drew. And Lana comes out and ruins it, right? And so distracts Bobby. Bobby gets consecutive claymores and loses the fight, or a headbutt and a claymore and loses the fight. And Ray, what was your point, Ray?
Now, I am of the belief that Lana's character, the way she has been used, embodies everything wrong with WWE.
Ooh, go on.
Think about it. She does shenanigans in matches that clearly do not need it.
Right.
She has had the worst storylines constantly.
whether it was with her husband, the real husband, or with Bobby. You had these scenarios where there's just so much going on with these. Look, there was no reason for her to come out there. We had a great match. You know what I mean? There just really wasn't a reason for that.
Great match, good old time.
And there was no reason why Bobby couldn't have took a Claymore and lost clean. It just wasn't. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't have hurt him. I mean, Lord, that's the champ, and he brutalized the champ. That mean, there's no reason not to do that. There was no reason for Lana to come out there. And the point that I think Ray's trying to make is, when you have this caliber of a wrestler, you don't have to always have shenanigans going on. Let him wrestle. Let him be great, And you could have told this story.
Now, let me say, I'm specifically saying Lana's character, not Lana as a person.
Oh, yeah.
Let me get that out of the way.
Right, Lana, that's the worst thing about it, is Lana is out there. She's being directed to do these things. These aren't her ideas. And the thing that is really the worst thing about it is you got a fantastic performance out of Bobby, which you haven't had in a while, not since he fought Braun in that little feud he had with Braun where they were beating each other up all over the arenas for a while, right? And yet you had these two guys give you all they had. Drew McIntyre had a chance to add a second classic, because I consider what he did with Seth a classic match. And I considered this one would have been a classic match if it just had a normal ending. And he could have added that to a very young title reign, and that would have been great for him. You know what I mean? And yet, we didn't tell that story. Go ahead.
It's like, I can't put it into words, but every time Lana is put into something, that something is instantly overbooked.
I do agree with you on this one, Ray. It is also the matter of Lana's character herself. How do I put this nice? It's from a bygone era, to put it in pretentious terms.
Correct.
It's something that feels like it's out of the diva era, not the women's division. And that's the problem. She's a diva in the women's division, and it isn't Lana's fault. It's because she's being booked like a diva in the women's division.
I totally agree with you there. It's a I don't want to say it's disrespectful, because I mean, obviously Lana seems to be okay with it and she's getting TV time and all of that, but it just doesn't do it for me. It doesn't do it for any of us. But let's move on to, because it was a great performance by those two people.
That's why
that's what's the thing that gets you
That's why
irritated.
it stuck out.
Yeah.
That's why it stuck out, because it's so good to that point.
Right. So we're going to move on to something fun. So we've been getting cinematic wrestling matches in WWE, and they decided to, instead of giving us a cinematic, we were supposed to have I don't know if we were supposed to have a Street Profits Viking Raiders match, but they cut to the parking lot and we were having a brawl between the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders, and they wrecked Braun's car. That turns into them fighting into the building, because they go, oh my God, that's Braun's car, and they run into the building. Then they get into it. 5 fingers to the, what did the 5 fingers say to the face?
Yeah.
Slap. They keep going. We're fighting. And then things kind of go off the rails a little bit, because when they get out,
A little bit. Just a little bit. Just a touch.
There's a bowling ball spot to the balls.
that was terribly cut and shot.
What, Nick? What did you think about? Do you want me to just go through what all happened and then we'll try to break it down? Okay.
But what I want to talk about is the end.
Okay.
Because there's so much that happens at the end.
Okay.
That must be discussed.
Okay. So if memory serves me correctly, there's a spot where they have golf clubs. The Prophets have golf clubs. The Vikings have shields, an axe, and a bowling ball, which turns into the bowling ball to the ball spot eventually. They fight their way outside, and the Street Profits put the Viking Raider through the window, and then they kind of are wore out, and they're wondering why they've done that to each other, and then they say, let's go out. Ibar?
Let's take it outside.
Ibar says, let's take
it outside.
And they were already outside, which they all recognize. And then as soon as they're about to restart their fight, several motorcycles with ninjas pull up and stop their car, or stop their bikes, and it looks like it's going to be a standoff. One of the ninjas arises from his bike, a motorcycle, walks to the four formerly mad at each other. We'll call them Viking Prophets, which they've... Okay, here's something funny. Before it started, he said, "What's up next?" And I said, "The Viking Prophets." They're basically the same thing now. And then we get Viking Prophets later on. Like literally 5 minutes later, they're calling themselves the Viking Prophets after this thing starts.
Predicted the future.
Oh, better than that. Justin called when he saw the motorcycles that they were going to be ninjas on motorcycles. So crazy. Anyway, Akira Tozawa seems to be a ninja of some kind, and there's a fight off, and the Vikings and the Prophets are able to fight the ninjas off, which, sidebar, if I don't get Akira Tozawa on 205 Live with the ninja faction, I'm going to be highly disappointed. I'd like them to be called the Foot Clan, if that's all right.
We can have the hand, we can have the Foot Clan, we'll call them the Knee Clan.
Correct. Then we wind up with, it looks as if Shaq is a ninja as well, because a large gentleman that may be Shaquille O'Neal, at least from the camera angle, he looked kind of like a Shaquille O'Neal, or it could be just, it's Orlando, there might, there's a lot of very tall people, but also I think Shaq has a house in Orlando. But anyway, I threw that out there. May not be real, but that's what, in my imagination, it was Shaq Fu from the original video game that was there.
That I think it got remade recently.
There you go. We got a commercial for Shaq Fu.
Unfortunately,
he has a sword, and the Viking Prophets decide to head to higher ground because they don't want to fight.
No! Don't skip over the most important part of this.
Oh my gosh!
No!
You're right.
Next time. Here's what happens. So our boy Shaq is about to draw his katana.
Shaq-like figure.
Ivar turns to the bush where he's dropped a turkey leg of some sort.
He was fighting with a turkey leg.
He raises his hand and uses the force to pull the turkey leg back into his hand.
I think that was a Thor reference because of the
force. I don't care, and he's raising it, about to strike him down with it, and then he pulls out the katana, and then suddenly, oh wait, that's the katana. What did you think it was? And he drops the turkey leg, and they bolt.
It was a Thor reference, though, right? Because he's a Viking.
Yeah, Thor. Well, the point is, this raises many questions.
But
it isn't even the most confounding thing in this match for me.
But then the best moment happens where
they run up to the top.
No.
Go ahead.
The best moment happens where I remember him being called a row. I think Eric now. He says, "I can take him." No, you can't. No, you can't.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. And then they book it.
Yeah, then they run up on top of a big 18-wheeler, run the length of it, and they wind up where the garbage area is. Two of them, they resume their fight, because anytime you're 14 to 20 feet off the ground, resuming your fight makes sense. They fall off.
Yeah, they got into an argument, to be fair.
Yeah, they fall into a trash bin. Yeah, they were arguing over who beat up the most ninjas, right?
Oh, and may I mention that you forgot, Ivor has had various flashbacks during this.
Visions.
Yes, they're visions. There were visions. I'm sure of
They
that.
leave the rule of threes with divisions, too.
Oh.
I applaud them for doing.
Okay, so then they all wind up falling in. Well, no. Montez gets fooled and pushed in. The other two fight in, and then Ibar dives in and does a senton into it, I believe. It was very nice. And then they're in the trash bin, and they're hurting because obviously it's been a long afternoon, and they're supposed to have a match, but they winds up getting canceled. But the referee doesn't know that yet, because the referee goes, "What are you guys doing? You're on next." And then bothers to notice that Ibar lying in garbage is a very attractive sight, which seems to be a constant theme running through all of these episodes, is that Ibar is an attractive man. And again, that's probably a Thor reference.
And Eric is not?
Eric is not is also emphasized.
Eric is married to Sarah Logan. So
Oh boy.
I don't know how that's connected in any way, but maybe that's a way of saying he's taking ladies. But I don't.
Maybe that's like a Thor and Loki
Okay, so
thing,
then they crawl out and there is
What?
actually no wrestling match. What did y'all think about this?
You forgot the most important part again.
Yes,
Because
tell
at
us.
the very end, after they said like, "Get out of here! You still have a match to do," which they don't actually do. They start crawling into the garbage, and
There's
start crawling,
noise.
and they hear loud grumbling. And at first, I think, "Oh, it's a fat joke with one of the Viking Raiders." No, they start realizing there's something alive in the garbage thing, and they all scutter, run away, scuttle away as fast as they can, as this giant rubber tentacle flops out of the garbage and starts trying to kill them. And they all scream at the top of their lungs. And then after that, we cut to WWE merchandise. How you should purchase it.
Was that a Kraken? Now I thought it was a callback to Star Wars. What did you think?
I think it's a callback to Star Wars, but either way, these two facts of the freaking chicken thing, turkey leg thing, and the squid thing raise two very large questions about the wrestling product within kayfabe. Number one, my man has magic. How is he not winning every match? off the bat. Number two, what is that in the garbage, Vince? What have you done? What is in the What is the squid? Why is there a squid in the? I enjoyed this match. Is what I'm trying to say.
The arm on that thing, the whatever you call it, the tentacle on that squid.
Tentacle.
That's calamari for years. You know, like you can feed every seafood restaurant from Orlando on down to Miami off that one thing.
Is it like a blob scenario?
It's incredible. Anyway, it was a lot, and I get it if somebody's watching it and hated it, and I kind of rolled my eyes at first, and then after a while I gave myself over to it. I actually thought to myself, if this was Impact, I'd be all in right here. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the difference between this is Impact and Impact was story. This is just like a bunch of pop culture references just mushed together in this.
I agree with Ray on this one. Let me be wrong. I enjoyed it because it was just stupid fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not wrestling, but it was definitely stupid fun that I enjoy. Might as well happen. Might as well have just a bunch. Why was Akira Tozawa? He has an army of ninjas now at his beck and call. I demand to see this every night on Raw.
Mm-hmm.
What was the ninjas on motorcycles referencing?
I want to see it done live. I want them to have a string connected to the inside of his outfit, and then they just how Sean came down on the string. He just raised his hand. You see a turkey leg fly from the top of the rafters on the crowded stadium. Just come straight into his hand. I want that.
I love it. Okay, so on from there to the reality of the single greatest wrestling match ever to end the pay-per-view. We have Randy Orton versus the rated R superstar Edge. And they set it up to where it has that big fight feel. Sounded like maybe they had Finkel's voice.
I kind of disliked the presentation.
Did you?
Because it felt really over the top.
I thought that was exactly what they were going for.
I know it's wrestling, but
Sorry, you go ahead. My bad.
Dude, they could have not had the Greatest Showman theme playing in the background while that was happening.
Are we talking about the opening or the actual? Okay, so let's.
No, I was
He's talking about pre-bell ring.
Yeah.
The pre-bell ring part was a bit much, I will agree, but I am a big fan of what they did during the match, as well as the new camera angles and also the way they tweaked the audio a bit.
Correct.
That was nice in my opinion.
Correct. But I honestly think that's what they were going for. I think they made it hokey like that because they wanted all of that to feel so over the top that once you got 2 to 3 minutes into a match, you settled in, right? It's that I think there was the counter of they made fun of themselves right there is what I think they were doing. But maybe not. Maybe they were just going for it and it just swung and missed. Maybe I'm being nice. Okay, so then when they start, it starts out kind of slow with some tie-ups and some moves. Edge gets to 2 deep arm drags, which are Steamboat style callbacks, the way he did them. And there will be callbacks throughout this entire match of great wrestlers from before and also moves of their own from before. And then when he goes for the third, Randy's the veteran. Randy is the one who has been working a lot in wrestling lately. So he's smart. He stops. Edge misses. Then Randy begins to brutalize Edge for quite a while. And by the way, Samoa Joe was the star of this entire show.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
He was
100%.
He was so good. Eventually we get to some spots outside the ring. Randy gets cut open. He's got a pretty good little mouse underneath a cut on his eye. They fight outside the ring to fight. So it doesn't wind up being just a wrestling match. You know, they do that for about 6-8 minutes, and then it turns into a pro wrestling match. And I said all along, they'd have been better off to say the greatest pro wrestling match ever, and that would have given it
They would
a
have been
little
better off
different.
just not saying the greatest of anything.
Well, you're probably right. But they did... Okay, we'll move on from that. Randy has Edge up for a third row DDT, and he doesn't get it, and that gets countered into a Gangrel DDT, which was cool because, of course, Edge starts out into Brood with Gangrel, which was cool. A couple of arm drags. A crossbody by Edge was another harken back to the greatest wrestling match ever, WrestleMania 3, Steamboat versus Savage. Also, he did a choking on the top rope spot, which is a classic Randy Savage spot. Edge winds up getting the angle slam, which is classic, and he hits it for the pin. He doesn't get it. No, that was Orton hits that. Orton winds up hitting a pedigree, again a classic, harkening back to other classic great wrestlers. Edge goes for a sharpshooter and misses. Edge hits a rock bottom, or what you call...
No, I just call it a rock bottom. I called it the bookend as a joke.
It's the bookend for the five-time WCW champion, King Booker. Okay, he tries a backslide. He hits Christian's finisher on him, which was a cool little twist. He doesn't get the pin on that. He hits a couple of spears. There's a kick out on that. Randy hits a couple of spectacular RKOs. He even hits an RKO where Edge does the spot which Christian had done a lot of, where he bounces off
the second
rope over the top of the competitor to try to get a roll up, and instead he dives into an RKO, which is actually how Christian, I think, got retired, right? The one more match thing ended on that, right? Okay. And so again, we're telling you little bits of the history of wrestling throughout this match, and then of course they get tied up again. And Randy Orton ends the greatest wrestling match ever with a thigh to the balls and a kick to the head.
Okay, I'm going to argue that was not a thigh to the balls, because if it was, then the commentators would have said that was a thigh to the balls. That was not.
They were saying it looked like a low blow on the commentary.
Were they?
Yes, they were. I remember because I heard what's his name, Tom Phillips, screaming at it at the top of his lungs.
The crowd thought it too. You could hear the crowd go, "Oh," when he did it.
Wait, then why didn't the ref disqualify him?
Mistakes happen.
DQ in the greatest wrestling match ever. That's my excuse.
Why would you want a low blow on the greatest
Well, also though,
I'm not saying
think about it.
It's good.
They were outside of the ring for more than 10 seconds a couple of different times, and it wasn't that big a deal. So, but anyway, so then he kicks him upside the head, puts the pin on him, and we get Edge losing back to back here. I still don't think they're done with each other, and I don't think Edge is done wrestling. So this is interesting because I thought for sure Edge had to pull this out in order for them to continue this, and I don't know where we go from here.
They're gonna have the greatest wrestling match ever, 2, for real this time.
I told them though, if Vince really wants to be funny at SummerSlam, for no reason, he'll throw Daniel Bryan and Shinsuke Nakamura in a match together, give them a 30-minute time limit, 2 out of 3 falls, and call that the best wrestling match ever all over again.
For real this time.
And yeah, for real this time can be like in parentheses. But anyway, with Edge doing the punt to get the win, you have him hearkening back to where we started with him, where he's the legend killer, right? And the most, the worst as a Viper, even for him, those moments where he's kicking Vince in the head or
John Cena's dad or...
Yeah, John Cena's dad, for goodness sakes. Did he kick Steph?
I think he kicked Steph.
He kicked and kissed Steph, I think.
No, he
kissed her right in front of what's his name was handcuffed to the ring. He couldn't even go over there. Oh,
what are you talking about?
Horrible.
That didn't happen. No.
Randy Orton's a bad person. Just a bad person. Okay, but anyway.
But every now and then he turns into a good guy again.
In character, he's a bad person. So, what did you think about all of this, Nick?
I thought it was a really, really good match. I mean, calling it the greatest wrestling match ever was going to doom it from the start, but you know what? They really did a fantastic job. It felt unique and new to them, at least for, those who are used to the WWE formula. And it was a good match. It was a fantastic match. They put everything on the line, and it was on this point when they were like going through the finishers and going through all this other stuff, I felt like, okay, now we have a real legitimate like big fight feel. I get it now.
Yes.
I feel like
that's what I feel like. Yes, 100%.
I'm hard pressed to say I if the low blow didn't, if the botched ending, not botched, but you know what I mean.
A different ending could have been better for you.
If a different ending happened I'd probably give it a strong 4 to a maybe light 5.
If you were ranking it on stars.
Yeah.
Is this out of 13?
This is out of 7.
Oh.
I give it a 20 out of 20 M&Ms.
Now,
that's all the M&Ms I ate when I was watching it.
If it was...
You keep counting
If it was in the Tokyo Dome, what are you giving that match?
In the Tokyo Dome?
2 stars?
2 stars.
Right.
Roughly.
Right.
The Tokyo Dome, I give it 30 M&Ms out of 20.
I would say that Randy earlier in the week said something about letting things breathe, making moves matter. And I think that Randy got his point across tonight if you were listening. That was fantastic storytelling by both of them. And I just loved it. I loved it. You know what I mean? They started out kind of like, oh, we're going to convince you it's going to be the greatest match ever. And the next thing you know, they're giving you all these little flashbacks of these great characters from all of our past that we love to watch wrestle, along with the storytelling of how Edge's neck. They kept harping on Edge's neck. And Joe kept telling you the stories of why this move hurts and why that move hurts and why this can't happen and why that needs to happen and what Randy's like as a competitor to be in there with. And Joe was able to do that every match. And he is so good on commentary. I love watching him wrestle, but I would be totally okay if this is what he winds up doing for the rest of his career, and he does it for a long time because he makes everything better. Anything you want to say about the pay-per-view in general, Nick?
Had a fun time. Had a real fun time. Still perplexed about the squid in the trash can. Look into that, Vince. But you know what? It was a solid time. 2 really great matches that I saw. I unfortunately missed a couple. But,
You saw the greatest match ever.
Good night.
You saw the greatest match ever. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
Ray?
I thought it was pretty fun.
You thought it was fun?
Yeah.
I had a freaking blast. Wonderful night for me. And I appreciate y'all listening to what we watched. I hope you had a good time too. It was a great week for Ray, for my man Nick, for KP. This has been a Go Home Heat production, copyright 2020. Ray, Nick.
Trans Black Lives Matter, ladies and gentlemen, and also please go home.